Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing my first Q&A, which I am excited about. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions on Instagram. None of y'all submitted anything on YouTube, so step up the game for next time. I have 10 questions that I'll answer today, and they're in 3 categories. First one is living abroad, living in the DR. Second one is learning Spanish, and the third one is marriage. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. First question is, how are you doing? I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing? What inspired you to know that you wanted to live internationally? This is a good question. It was one of the first ones that came in, so I thought about it for a while. And when I dig deep down, I think going on a few mission trips to Ecuador in high school definitely sparked something in me, especially when we went to the jungle. That was probably the biggest culture shock moment I had during those trips. Just seeing people who are completely cut off from the outside world in so many ways and live on much fewer resources than I did or I do. And I think it was the second trip when we saw a European lady, like a white blonde lady just living there amongst the locals. I recall her kind of being just like unbothered when we were there. I don't know if unbothered is the right word, but I didn't really get to talk to her. Other people on my team did. And she just seemed like, this is her normal life. This is what she chose to do. And we were all like, oh wow, another white person. And there was something about that attracted me, seeing someone just defect and choose a totally different path in life. So that was when I was in high school. And the less positive part of this answer, I guess, is in college. I just felt entirely unsure of how to maneuver the US job market. Did not feel confident in my ability to get a job after college. And I had this lasting desire to go abroad or live abroad. So even though I didn't get to study abroad, I decided I'll just turn it into teaching abroad. Then I met my husband and stayed here. So that's how I came to live abroad. One thing I love about living in DR and one thing I don't. Okay. Well, if I had to pick one thing, I guess just in general, being able to live on less, being able to live more simply. Like I don't have to have a car here. That saves me a lot of expenses, saves me a lot of worries, possibly. Being able to walk places is nice. But I know that's kind of specific to my situation, working from home especially. But yeah, I do appreciate being able to live on less. And it means I don't have to work as much. Like I basically work part-time hours, and that's pretty nice. The one thing I don't like, I'm gonna have to go with the heat. Sometimes it just really gets to me. Now, believe me, I can't complain about not having to check the weather every single day because it's just always gonna be a nice hot temperature. But in these summer months, it does get to me sometimes, and I just don't like sweating all the time. So I'm gonna go with the heat. It feels bad to complain about that, but sometimes I just really want that nice fall crisp air. Sometimes in the morning, I'll even make believe it's fall. The room will be a little bit chill from having the AC on overnight. The soft light of the sunrise will be coming through the window. And I'll just be sitting there reading and be like, it's fall, but it's not. Not a girl dream. Tips for finding a job in DR and tips for apartment hunting without getting ripped off. Good questions. So let's talk about jobs first. I have a few tips if you want to teach. For other careers, honestly, I'm not too sure about getting into those job markets. But if you want to teach, number one, you could Google the city you want to live in, plus international school or bilingual school, English school, some sort of search result that will get you a list of schools. And then just try cold emailing. I did that for a few schools when I knew I wanted to move to Santo Domingo. I did get an interview that way. I didn't get the job, but how I found my job was actually through a Facebook group. It's called English Teachers in the Dominican Republic. I posted what I was looking for inadvertently. I was actually trying to post in a different group, but it worked out because someone from the school that I taught at found me there and we connected, and I came to work here. You can also work for local language schools, although when I was looking into those and when my husband was looking into them for me, they wanted you to have residency first because they didn't want to bother with not having an official resident as an employee. I would look into those if you want to make more money and if you are going through the residency process. Now, tips for apartment hunting. I did make a video about this. I will link it up in the cards. My biggest tip would just be having a local contact, if possible, working with someone locally who can help you. My husband was the one who did all of the apartment searching and touring and things like that, so I was very fortunate in that way. Next, we're diving into questions about learning Spanish. What was the hardest part about learning Spanish? Can I say 3? So 1, all the verb tenses and conjugations, when to use them, that's a pretty tricky part. 2, listening comprehension, because I can read Spanish, I can write Spanish, and I could understand it, but then when someone starts talking, it's like an entirely different world, especially when I went to Honduras, and then even more so when I came here, because that leads me to number 3, Dominican Spanish, if that counts, because they talk so fast, they have a lot of slang words that are more specific to this country, and I felt like I had a lot of catching up to do speaking Spanish here. Best tips for Spanish learning if I can't live abroad yet. I appreciate how you recognize that immersion is a really good way to learn, because it is, but if you can't live abroad yet, number 1, I would take advantage of any classes or courses local to you, especially in person, that you could take. Like if you're in high school, make sure you take advantage of Spanish classes, and if you're in college, also try to take some Spanish classes, and that will help you really get the basics down, like the foundations of how it works, how the language works grammatically, and get a solid foundation of vocabulary. And as I mentioned, it will help you get a head start on learning all those verb conjugations. Second tip, talk to Spanish speakers if you know any. Just say, hey, I want to talk in Spanish. This is something I had to do for my last class in high school. And as much as I hated doing it because I was like awkward and I didn't want to talk to people, it does help, because oftentimes they'll teach you Spanish on a more colloquial level rather than a proper level. And they'll throw in random words that you can just Google real quickly, because if you're texting, it's really helpful to have that slower pace of conversation rather than trying to jump into face-to-face conversation, because you can look at the words, you don't have to worry about listening comprehension, you can translate it as much as you need, and it'll just get you started with how to have a conversation. Third tip would be to listen to Spanish music, watch videos in Spanish. What I like to do if I find a channel that's in Spanish, or actually I did this in French too. If I find a channel that's talking about topics I usually like to watch, I'll subscribe. If I watch it or not is another story. But yeah, the French channel, I've watched like 2 videos maybe, but you know what? It's a start, and that's the point. Like if you're seeing the thumbnails because you subscribe, that also will help you. So yeah, if you can listen to like Spanish media, that will help you train your listening. And number 4, Duolingo, because why not? I know people route in Duolingo, like you can't get fluent on Duolingo, like maybe not, but it's still something where you're practicing every day. And if you're like me and you get addicted to keeping your streak, then you'll keep practicing. Next, we are on to the topic of marriage. What have you learned in your first year of marriage? One thing I learned is just not everything will happen all at once, and you won't just be melded into this perfect relationship starting on day 1 of getting married. Marriage is not so much the destination, it's more like a fork in the road where your 2 paths are becoming one, and then the path continues. Like you just keep on the path. It's not like, okay, we got married, everything is figured out. It's just the beginning of a journey. For example, we didn't just come home from our honeymoon to a fully furnished apartment with the same last name and a joint bank account open. As a child, I think I probably took these things for granted and thought that just all happens when you get married. But as an adult, you realize you gotta work for those things. And even those are more surface level things. But beyond that, I learned marriage doesn't have to be just the goal or what you do when you have it all figured out. It's just the journey. You just keep figuring it out. It takes time to get used to each other, to meld our lives into one, and that's okay. Everything doesn't have to be perfect, so don't freak out when it's not. It's all part of the journey of just growing together. Did you face a lot of criticism from friends and family marrying someone from DR? Short answer, yes. I mean, I wouldn't say a lot, but when someone is criticizing something that's that important to you as the person you're gonna marry, it feels like a lot, no matter how much it actually is. And I would also say more so family than friends. The criticism also usually came from older generations. For example, there's one time I was being introduced to someone I would never see again, someone who's not even my family or my friends, especially not after that. They were friends of a family member. So I was being introduced to them, and this person was telling them like, oh, she lives in the DR, she teaches kids there. She also just got engaged. And the lady was like, well, your fiance isn't from down there, is he? I was like, yeah, he is. And she was like, oh no. The person I was with was like, oh, like they love each other or whatever. But I was like, just mind your business. I don't know. It was just kind of awkward. Some criticism came more blatantly like that, and others came more subtly, but I get the hint. For example, people will make indirect comments. They'll say things to my sister like, oh, you can't go down there too. We can't lose you too. You have to stay here. Okay, I get it. But anyways, it is what it is. I chose who I wanted to marry. I was sure of my decision and I just had to tune it out. How did you and your husband meet? I am hoping to make a video about this, and I've been saying this for a while. I want to make a video about how we met someday, sitting down, telling the story, because that's fun. I like to watch those videos for other people. But basically, we met online. We met on a Christian dating site or app, both. It's not like one of the big ones, it's some weird one. The interface is terrible, but hey, it works. And the last question is in Spanish, so I will answer in Spanish. ¿Cómo va tu vida de casada? Mi vida de casada va bien, gracias. Creo que prefiero la etapa de casada que la de noviazgos porque no tengo que esperar a mi esposo, no tengo que estar diciendo ¿cuándo te puedo ver? Y yo no estoy escribiéndole todo el día, todas las cosas que pasan en el día. Pero ahora él viene a casa todos los días y le puedo decir todo en persona. Y sí, es bueno estar con él siempre. Menos cuando él está en el trabajo, pero sí, mi vida de casada va bien. Gracias. So those are all the questions for today. I hope you all enjoyed this Q&A. I had fun doing it. Thank you for sending your questions as well. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.